Aries, let me ask you something. Have you felt it lately? That quiet pressure in the air, like someone is watching how you move, not to judge you, but to measure you. You're not chasing attention, you're not explaining yourself anymore, and somehow, that's exactly why they can't stop looking. There's a restless energy around you now, freedom-driven, unpredictable, someone who hates limits, someone who always aims straight for the center, and usually hits it. They speak the truth without fear. They move fast. They don't stay still. And whether they admit it or not, your presence has triggered something in them. This isn't about luck. It's not random. And it's definitely not accidental. So before you scroll away, Aries, pause for just a moment. Trust what you're sensing. And if this already feels familiar, tell me in the comments. Because what you're about to hear next is where the real story begins. Aries, stay with me for a moment. I want you to imagine this not as something happening outside of you, but something unfolding quietly within you. Because when someone starts watching you this closely, it's rarely about curiosity. It's about resonance. You didn't announce a transformation. You didn't make a statement. You simply stopped leaking your energy into places that no longer deserved it. And that silence, that clean, unspoken boundary shifted the entire room. People feel that, even when nothing is said, especially when nothing is said. You see, there's a kind of attention that arrives, not because you're loud, but because you're aligned. It's the kind that follows confidence without aggression, strength without explanation, the kind that makes someone pause and think, wait, when did they get so solid? And that's where you are now. Not hiding, not chasing, just standing in your own gravity. There's a reason this feels unfamiliar. You're used to moving fast, Aries, charging forward, breaking ground. But this moment isn't about motion. It's about presence. Someone noticed the way you stopped reacting, the way you didn't rush to fix, defend, or clarify, the way you let things fall where they may. That's not indifference. That's mastery. And for certain people, that kind of shift is unsettling. They don't know where to place you anymore. They can't predict your next move. They can't read you the way they used to. So they watch, quietly, intently, not because they want to step closer, but because they're trying to understand what changed. Let me ask you something, Aries. When was the last time you chose calm over control and didn't feel the need to explain why? That moment matters more than you think, because this isn't about being seen, it's about being felt. And right now, your energy is speaking louder than your words ever did. There's a light around you that doesn't flicker, a steadiness that wasn't there before. And the people who once felt taller than you are now quietly adjusting their posture. You didn't do anything to provoke this. You simply grew. And growth has a way of revealing who was only comfortable when you stayed the same. So take a breath here. Let the room settle. Let the silence do its work. You don't need to look over your shoulder. You don't need to change your pace. Just keep listening to that quiet inner signal that's been guiding you here all along, because what you're sensing now is only the surface of something deeper. And in a moment, we're going to step into why this attention appeared exactly now and what it's trying to show you about the power you've been carrying without realizing it. Stay with me. Aries, let's slow this down together. Because the shock isn't in the watching itself. It's in who it is. If you look closely, you'll realize this attention isn't coming from someone new. It's coming from a familiar place, a place you already walked through once and quietly outgrew. That's why it feels strange, almost unreal. This is someone who once believed they had you figured out. Someone who placed you in a mental box without ever telling you they did. They thought they knew your limits, They assumed your courage had an edge, that you would push hard, but only so far. And then you didn't. You didn't collapse. You didn't seek approval. You didn't stay small to keep the peace. You simply stepped outside of their reach. That's the moment everything shifted. This person isn't watching because they admire you. Not yet. They're watching because something inside them no longer feels stable. You changed the dynamic without confronting it, without announcing it, without demanding anything. That's unsettling for someone who once felt taller than you. They replay conversations in their head now. They notice details they ignored before. The calm in your voice, the way you no longer rush to respond, the way your energy doesn't chase theirs anymore. And it leaves them wondering when exactly they lost control. Here's something most people never say out loud. When someone stops being able to influence you, they don't always walk away. Sometimes they observe. Sometimes they try to understand what went wrong. You became unpredictable to them. Not chaotic, not reckless, but sovereign. And Aries, that's dangerous to anyone who benefited from the old version of you. Let me ask you something gently. Have you noticed how certain people go quiet when you enter the room now? Not cold, not distant, just recalibrating. That pause is information, because you didn't just grow louder, you grew clearer, and clarity makes power visible. This is why the watching feels intense, not emotional, not dramatic, but focused, like someone trying to memorize a map after realizing they no longer know the terrain. You don't need to confront this. You don't need to confirm it. Your awareness is enough. Just stay rooted, stay present, stay honest with yourself. Because this attention didn't arrive to distract you. It arrived to reveal something important about how far you've come. And as we move forward, what matters most isn't who's watching. It's what you're becoming now that you're no longer waiting for permission to be yourself. Take a breath here. Let that truth land. And when you're ready, we'll step into what this shift is preparing you for next, and why this moment is far more meaningful than it first appears. Stay with me. Aries. There's something different about you now, and you didn't announce it. You didn't make a post. You didn't explain your reasons. You didn't sit anyone down and say, "This is who I am becoming." You just changed. And that kind of change is the hardest for people to understand, because it doesn't ask for permission. You speak less, not because you have nothing to say, but because you no longer feel the need to fill every silence. Your words land slower now, more deliberate. They come from a place that's already decided. You move with intention, not urgency, not reaction. And that alone shifts the way the world meets you. People can feel it when someone stops explaining themselves. It creates a quiet pressure, a pause, almost like the air recalibrates. You didn't become colder, you became clearer. And clarity has weight. There was a time when others believed you would always be available, always responsive, always ready to show up, fix things, fight for something, or carry more than your share. They built expectations around that version of you. They grew comfortable with it. So when you chose to keep walking without turning back to justify why, it unsettled them. Not because you were wrong, but because you were no longer predictable. Here's the part most people don't talk about. Growth doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like restraint, like choosing not to react, like letting a message go unanswered because your nervous system finally knows peace. And Aries, that kind of restraint takes more strength than confrontation ever did. Let me ask you something, quietly. When was the last time you trusted yourself enough to move forward without waiting for validation? That moment was a turning point, even if no one else noticed it at the time. Because from there, Your energy stopped circling outward. It came home. You're no longer standing still hoping someone catches up. You're walking at your own pace. Now. And that creates distance between who you were and who others expected you to remain. Some people don't know how to bridge that distance, so they watch from where they stand, not to judge, not to interrupt, but to understand how you slipped beyond the version of you they once relied on. And here's the healing truth in all of this. You didn't abandon anyone. You honored yourself. That's not selfish. That's maturity. So if something feels lighter lately, even in the uncertainty, that's not coincidence. That's alignment. You're learning to trust the quiet version of your power, the one that doesn't need to prove itself, the one that simply knows. And as you settle into that knowing, something else begins to rise, a new kind of momentum, one that doesn't rush but doesn't stop either. Stay with that feeling. Let it guide you. Because what's unfolding next isn't about who noticed your change. It's about what becomes possible now that you're no longer holding yourself back for anyone else. Take a breath here. We're just beginning to touch the deeper layer of this story, Aries. There's a quiet tension around you now. Not heavy, not dramatic, just present. It's the kind of tension that comes when someone is waiting, watching the clock, scanning your face, listening for the sound of doubt. They expected a crack by now, a pause, a stumble, some small sign that you might second-guess yourself, because that's how it used to work. When pressure showed up, you reacted. When expectations grew louder, you pushed harder. And somewhere along the way, people learned they could anticipate your rhythm. But something shifted. You didn't rush. You didn't tense up. You didn't fall into old patterns of proving your strength. You slowed down. Not because you were unsure, but because you finally trusted your footing. There's a difference between hesitation and intention. And you chose intention. You're moving with a steadiness now that makes others uncomfortable. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because you're no longer predictable. They keep waiting for you to flinch, to apologize, to explain why you're taking your time. And every day that you don't, it unsettles them just a little more. You see, Aries, some people only feel secure when they can measure themselves against your struggle. When they believe you're fighting the same uphill battles they are. So when you stop struggling out loud, when you stop broadcasting effort, it challenges the story they told themselves about who you were allowed to become. You didn't disappear, you didn't fail, you didn't retreat. You simply stopped reaching for reassurance, and that's powerful. Let me ask you something softly. Have you noticed how calm feels unfamiliar after years of living in urgency? That's not weakness, that's recalibration. You're learning that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it hums, low, steady, unshakable, and the person watching you can feel that hum. They can't interrupt it, they can't speed it up. They can only observe as you continue forward without asking for permission. That's why their discomfort grows. Not because you're attacking them, but because you're no longer available to be pulled off course. You don't need their approval to keep going. You don't need their reaction to validate your progress. And that independence creates a distance they don't know how to cross. So if you sense eyes on you, don't tense your shoulders. Don't shrink your presence. Let it be information. Let it remind you that the version of you who used to doubt is no longer in charge. You're walking with a quieter kind of courage now, the kind that doesn't break under observation, the kind that doesn't collapse under expectation. And as this moment stretches on, as you continue choosing yourself without needing to announce it, another realization begins to surface. This attention you're feeling isn't meant to stop you. It's revealing just how much ground, you've already covered. So take a breath here. Feel your feet on the path you chose, and keep moving at your pace. Because the story isn't about whether you'll fall. It's about what opens up when you finally realize you're no longer walking on unstable ground. Stay with me. There's more light ahead. There's more light. Aries. This is the part that takes a little courage to hear. So let's breathe through it together. Because the truth isn't dramatic. It's subtle, and that's what makes it powerful. The person watching you isn't driven by hatred. Not really. They're not wishing for your collapse or hoping to see you disappear. What unsettles them is the idea of you becoming something they can no longer reach. They don't want you gone. They just want you smaller, more familiar, easier to place. They were comfortable with the version of you that stayed within a certain range. Strong, yes. Capable, absolutely. But still within a boundary they understood. And when you began to stretch beyond that boundary, without warning, without asking, it disturbed the balance they had quietly relied on. This isn't about competition. It's about hierarchy. About where they believed they stood in relation to you. They didn't expect you to surpass them. They didn't expect you to outgrow the role they had assigned you in their inner narrative. So they watch. Not to stop you outright, but to track how far you'll go. And Aries, this is where your power lives now. Because you were never meant to live under someone else's ceiling. You weren't built to dim your fire so others could feel taller in its shadow. You carry a forward force that doesn't shrink on command, a momentum that answers to truth, not permission. And somewhere deep inside, they know that. They recognize it in the way you no longer seek validation, in how you don't adjust your tone to be more acceptable, in how your presence feels grounded instead of reactive. That's what makes them uneasy. Not your success, not your confidence, but your independence. Let me ask you something gently. Have you noticed how freeing it feels to stop negotiating your worth? That freedom is new, and it's real. You didn't take anything from them. You simply reclaimed yourself. And when someone has grown accustomed to standing above you, your refusal to stay below feels like loss. But this isn't something you need to carry guilt for. You're not responsible for protecting someone else's sense of importance. Your growth doesn't diminish anyone. It only reveals what was already fragile. So if their attention feels heavy at times, don't internalize it. It's not a warning, it's confirmation. Confirmation that you're stepping into a version of yourself that can't be managed or minimized. And as you stand here now, rooted and aware, another truth begins to surface quietly. You're not here to prove anything. You're here to expand. And the moment you truly accept that, the watching loses its power. Because what comes next isn't about who wanted you smaller. It's about how far you're willing to go now that you know you were never meant to stay where you were. Take a breath. Let that settle. We're moving into a deeper clarity now. And what unfolds, from here is where your path truly opens. Aries, there is a shift that happens when someone realizes they can no longer reach you the way they once did. It does not announce itself. It does not need words. It is felt. Like a room that suddenly feels quieter, even though nothing changed on the surface. Like standing near a fire that no longer burns you, but still gives off warmth. That is where you are now. An invisible boundary has settled into place. Not built out of distance, not built out of anger, but out of self-respect. You did not raise your voice. You did not close doors dramatically. You simply stepped into a different frequency. And when you do that, certain hands can no longer follow. You do not need to avoid anyone. Avoidance still gives energy away. You do not need to confront anyone either. confrontation invites noise. What you are learning now is the strength of neutrality. It is the calm choice to keep moving forward without dragging the past behind you, to stay present in your own life without checking who is watching. That kind of stillness creates confusion for people who were used to pulling emotional strings. Because silence, when it is intentional, is not emptiness. It is direction. You are no longer reacting from instinct alone. You are responding from alignment. And that changes everything. Let me ask you something softly. When was the last time you realized you could walk away from something without needing closure to feel complete? That realization marks a threshold. You crossed it quietly. And now you stand in a place where others can see you but cannot influence you. They feel the distance not because you left, but because you arrived somewhere new. Your silence does not confuse them because it is cold. It confuses them because it is steady. They cannot read it. They cannot interrupt it. They cannot rush it. And the more grounded you become, the less power their attention holds. This is not about shutting down. It is about opening inward. Choosing yourself does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop negotiating your peace. You still move forward. You still dream. You still feel. But you do it without needing approval or acknowledgement from outside of yourself. That is what makes this moment sacred. You are learning how to exist fully without being available to be pulled off center. And as you continue in this direction, another layer begins to reveal itself. A quiet understanding. A deeper sense of timing. An awareness that what is meant to meet you will do so without force. So stay where you are. Not physically, energetically. Keep choosing the path that feels clean in your body. Keep trusting the pauses. Keep honoring the silence that protects you. Because the truth is, Aries, once someone can no longer reach you, they stop defining you. And what comes next is not about distance from others. It is about closeness to yourself. Take a breath here. Let the stillness settle. There is a deeper clarity unfolding now, and we are just beginning to step into it. Aries, this isn't arriving to frighten you. It's arriving to steady you. There are moments in life when awareness shows up not as a warning, but as a confirmation. This is one of those moments. You are being shown this now because you're standing at a point where turning back would feel easier, but staying the course matters more. You didn't stumble into this phase. You earned it. Every choice you made quietly. Every time you chose growth over comfort. Every time you listened to your inner signal instead of the noise around you. All of it led here. The reason this awareness feels intense is because something is aligning behind the scenes, not rushing, not forcing, but arranging. You're entering a season where your presence carries weight, where people notice the way you hold yourself, where your decisions ripple outward without you needing to push. That kind of visibility isn't accidental. You're being observed, yes, but more importantly, you're being recognized. Recognized for the steadiness you've cultivated, for the restraint you learned, for the fire you no longer waste. And every time you take another step forward, someone behind you realizes they no longer have access to the version of you they once counted on. That realization can sting, but it is not your burden to soften. Let me ask you something gently. Can you feel how this moment is asking you to trust yourself more than ever before? Not louder, not harder, just clearer. This isn't a phase where you chase opportunities. It's a phase where opportunities begin to notice you, where your alignment speaks before you do, where timing opens doors without you having to knock. That's why this message comes now. Not earlier, not later. You are ready to move forward without looking over your shoulder. You're ready to choose what expands you, even if it means outgrowing what once felt familiar. And the universe isn't asking you to be fearless. It's asking you to be honest. Honest about what you want now. Honest about where you no longer belong. Honest about the fact that you're meant for something more spacious than the past you've already survived. So if you feel a quiet resolve settling in, that's not pressure, that's alignment. If you sense a subtle distance growing between you and certain people, that's not loss. That's evolution. You're not being pushed forward, you're being supported from behind. And as you continue walking this path, another truth begins to surface softly. What's coming next will require you to stay grounded in who you are, not who you used to be. So pause here for a breath. Let the clarity land. Because the next part of this story is about what opens up when you stop questioning your direction and start trusting that you're exactly where you're meant to be. Stay with me. We're moving into something meaningful now. Aries. If you're still here with me, that tells me something important. It tells me this wasn't just background noise for you. Something in this story found a quiet place to rest inside your chest. And that matters, because not everyone who watches you is meant to walk beside you. Some people are only meant to witness who you become from a distance they no longer understand. You don't need to harden yourself against that. You don't need to build walls. You don't need to retreat. You simply need to stay where you are, rooted, clear, present. There's a calm strength in knowing that access to you is earned, not assumed, that your energy is not public property, that your inner world is sacred. You've learned that without anyone teaching you. And that wisdom shows. You don't owe explanations for your growth. You don't owe reassurance to those who only felt comfortable when you were smaller. You don't need to prove your worth by exhausting yourself anymore. What you carry now is a quieter kind of fire, one that warms instead of burns, one that doesn't need to flare up to be real. And yes, that kind of fire draws attention, not because it's desperate to be seen, but because it's steady. If someone is watching, let them. It doesn't mean they belong in your future. It only means your presence left an imprint they didn't expect. Here's a gentle question for you, Aries. What would it feel like to trust this version of yourself completely? Not the version that reacts, not the version that pushes through exhaustion, but the one who listens inward and moves when it feels right. That trust is the real gift of this moment. You're not here to shrink for anyone. You're not here to explain your evolution. You're here to live it. And the more you allow yourself to do that, the less power the watching holds. Because awareness without access is just observation. It cannot touch you. It cannot change you. Only you can do that. So take this with you. Into the next choice. Into the next conversation. Into the quiet moments when you wonder if you're doing enough. You are. You always were. And if this message stayed with you, if it felt like a mirror rather than a lecture, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Not because you owe anything, but because your voice matters here too. Trust yourself, Aries. Stay with your rhythm. Stay with your truth. And remember this. You are not being watched because you are fragile. You are being watched because you are becoming unmistakably strong. Stay close. There's always more to unfold. Aries, before you go, let me leave you with something real. If this message stayed with you, if it felt less like a reading and more like a quiet conversation meant just for you, that's not coincidence. You didn't find this moment. You arrived at it. And here's the truth I want you to carry with you tonight. Not everyone who notices your strength will ever understand it. Not everyone who watches you will earn the right to walk beside you. And that's okay. You are not here to be accessible to everyone. You are here to be honest with yourself. So if something inside you shifted today, even just a little, trust that. That's your inner fire, speaking without urgency, without fear. If you feel called to share, tell me in the comments what part of this message found you. You're not speaking into a void here. You're speaking into a space built for Aries who are learning to stand fully in their truth. And if you want to stay connected, subscribe. Not because you need answers, but because this journey continues. And the next message is already forming. More clarity, more depth, more reminders of who you really are when no one else is watching. Until then, trust yourself, protect your energy, and remember this, Aries. You were never being observed because you were weak. You were noticed because your strength has become impossible to ignore. Stay close. The story isn't over yet.